work at this point to, you know, in a three-part kind of way to try to ensure broader protections for transgender people. So we're continuing to do the precedent-setting litigation that we have always historically done. You know, we've had a 5-day trial in tax court representing Rhiannon O'Donovan, and we're waiting for an opinion in that case. Continue to work on a broad range of employment matters that come in, sometimes in a more informal way, sometimes avoiding litigation given the now more well-established protections for transgender people. But we're also really broadening the legislative advocacy that we have historically done. New England had in some ways led the country when Rhode Island passed its gender identity and expression explicit non-discrimination law in 2001. Vermont has passed a law, Maine has passed a law, but Massachusetts and Connecticut and New Hampshire remain states without explicit protections, and so there's a lot of advocacy that remains to be done, and education work to support the legislative changes. And then the third piece that we're really focusing on in, I think, a more intensified way now is public policy. So, for example, the Real ID Act, which is a federal law which is now seeking to coordinate all these state and federal databases around personal information about people's lives, certainly has made, in many ways, transgender people's lives more difficult because of the now cross-compared data between Social Security and driver's licenses and birth certificates, for example. And there's all these burdensome standards that prohibit people from getting gender markers that reflect their lived experiences. And so, you know, we've been actively talking with the Registry of Motor Vehicles, for example, in Massachusetts to change that burdensome policy. We've been working with individuals to do advocacy, sometimes in the courts, to get people's gender markers changed in ways that they might not otherwise be able to do within the context of a particular government agency. And so really looking at that issue in a broader way is sort of a piece of that public policy work. The other piece that we're really focusing intensively on is access to medical care. Transgender people are denied medical care in lots of different ways, but one of the ways is the explicit exclusions that we see in contracts of health insurance in both the private and the public context. And we're really looking very closely at that issue to change the ways in which those policies are issued. In other words, doing advocacy with employers to say, you know, this is a bad way to treat your employees, and you should have inclusive policies, as well as to begin to lay the legal groundwork for challenging those exclusions.